We are coming down the stretch of the NBA season, and the Detroit Pistons have 17 games left remaining. And with 17 games left on the table, the Detroit Pistons have already shattered all expectations coming into this season. When we look at all the big time things they've been able to do on the basketball court, playing their best basketball as a franchise since the year 2009. At one point this season, the Detroit Pistons went on an 8-game winning streak, and then also just having a record of 7 games above 500. The Detroit Pistons are currently 36-29, which has them at 6th place in the Eastern Conference. And with the way things are shaping up in the Eastern Conference, is looking like at bare minimum the Pistons should have that final guaranteed spot in the Eastern Conference playoffs. So all in all, a magnificent season for the Detroit Pistons. And if we look a little further and we compare it to last year, it's actually an historic season for the Detroit Pistons. And it's historic for a couple of reasons. It's historic by it being one of the biggest turnarounds in NBA history, and it's historic by how the way the Detroit Pistons have formed this turnaround, or how they've executed this turnaround. Because we look at throughout NBA history, every other team that has had a turnaround like this, it has been by the acquisition of another big time player or another superstar. And some that just come to the top of my head, we can look at the Boston Celtics getting Kevin Garnett all those years back. We can look at LeBron James going to the Cleveland Cavaliers for the second time, or we can look at LeBron James going to the Los Angeles Lakers. So those are just some situations that come to the top of my mind. And obviously the Detroit Pistons, they didn't add anyone to their roster like this, but they made a lot of changes in the offseason, and the changes that they have made have led to this historic turnaround. And it all started with the front office and the coaching situation. We see them get rid of Troy Weaver, and we also see them get rid of Coach Monty Williams, and they bring in JB Bickerstaff, and they bring in Trajan Langdon, who formerly worked for the New Orleans Pelicans. And Coach JB Bickerstaff, he formerly coached for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And these two moves have led to something very special for the Detroit Pistons. When we look at what Coach JB Bickerstaff has been able to do with this team, the confidence that he has them playing with, the continuity, the chemistry, and then just the all-around hustle on both the offensive and the defensive side of the ball, it's been very beautiful. And then we look at what Trajan Langdon has been able to do, bringing over Fred Vincent with them for the New Orleans Pelicans, who is the shot doctor over there, who helped a lot with Lonzo Ball, who helped with Herb Jones, and who also helped with Jose Alvarado. 3 guys that struggled shooting the three-point shot, who he was able to help improve their three-point percentage a lot. But nonetheless, when President Langdon got to the Detroit Pistons, I think he was faced with a lot of tough choices, because like we all know, the Detroit Pistons coming off a very nightmarish season, setting the record for most consecutive L's in a single season. There was a bunch of different directions that he could have went in as the president of basketball operations for the Detroit Pistons. And a lot of people thought that he was going to use some of the young talent on this team as trade assets, guys like Jaden Ivey, guys like Jalen Duren. Basically, everybody would have been touchable from my estimation, other than Cade Cunningham. But President Langdon, he did not go in that direction. He actually came out and said that he wanted to further develop this young talent on the team, and I'm so happy that that's the direction that he did go in, because since we've been drafted all of these guys, other than Killian Hayes, I thought all of these guys were really good and had a bunch of potential. You can go look throughout the channel for over the last 3 or 4 years now, had nothing but praise for these young guys, but we just never could get the right people around them to bring out the potential in these young players. Troy Weaver, he tried it a lot, bringing in Bogdanovich, who we never really seen on the court, and when he did get on the court, the goddamn season was already over. Same thing with Jeremy Grant. He was a really good basketball player, but just very unavailable, and that really stunted the growth of the young players on the Detroit Pistons. So now we get to this previous offseason where the moves that the Detroit Pistons made in the offseason, they weren't eye-catching, and if you're not really deep into basketball, you probably didn't know who those guys were that the Detroit Pistons were bringing in. But the players that they brought in, it has meant the world to Cade Cunningham. It meant the world to Jaden Ivey when he was playing. It's meant the world to Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, because we have seen excuse me again, we have seen such steady growth from all of the guys in our young core. And that first move that he made as president of basketball operations, he brought in Tobias Harris. And initially, a lot of people weren't moved by the Tobias Harris signing, and I understand it because we look at him with his previous team. I think the fans there, I don't want to say they slandered his basketball image, but I think they misconstrued it because, at one point in his career, Tobias Harris, he came across a blessing, and that's the Philadelphia 76ers. They wanted to pay him as like an all-star player, as a superstar player, when that's something that Tobias Harris has never been in his NBA career. But who would turn down that type of money? But I think this kind of made the fans upset that he was getting paid this type of money. And when it came down to playoff games, and when it came down to big time games, we're not seeing Tobias Harris perform as an all-star or a superstar, even though that's not who he is. They kind of let him happen. So that's why I say his basketball image is kind of gotten misconstrued. But when we look at who Tobias Harris actually is, the basketball player that he is, even though he's not a superstar or an all-star, he's still a pretty damn good basketball player. And his tenure with the Philadelphia 76ers, he did average 17 points per game as a Philadelphia 76er. So that's nothing to sneeze at. So he gets here to Detroit, and President Langdon gives him a 2-year deal. $26 million a year, $52 million. And like I said, initially people wasn't moved by that deal, but I've always thought like this was a great signing because I think this is exactly what the Detroit Pistons needed. And when we look at Tobias Harris and the role that he's playing on the Detroit Pistons right now, and we compare it to other players that were supposed to be playing the role that he's playing, the biggest difference is that Tobias Harris, he's available. And I'm talking about the Jeremy Grants and the Bogdanoviches. We already touched on that earlier in the videos, that those guys were good basketball players, but we never seen those guys until the season was over with. But Tobias Harris, for all of his NBA career, he's been available. For this season, he's been available. I think he might have missed a couple of games this season due to personal reasons, but not because of no ticky-tack injuries that's going to sit him down for a long period of time. So I love that about Tobias Harris. And then what he brings on the basketball court, I think he's such a great outlet for Cade Cunningham because he's a basketball player that you have to respect as a scorer. He's somebody that can do it from all three levels. He can knock down the three-point shot. He does a great job of attacking closeouts. He can do a one dribble mid-range pull-up. He can use dribble moves to get his shot off. He can get downhill. He has a post game, so he's really decent on the offensive side of the ball. And the same energy that he uses on the offensive side of the ball, he uses it on the defensive side of the ball as well. He has great size, and he's a willing defender. So I think this was a great pickup by Langdon, and so was the next player that he signed after Tobias Harris, which was Malik Beasley, or should I call him Malik Beasley, because that's what he's been doing this season, shooting the blood out of the basketball. And that's another thing, just like the Detroit Pistons needed another scoring outlet, another independent scoring outlet, they also needed a sharp shooter, and that's something that they haven't had in a very long time, was a sharp shooter. But Malik Beasley, he definitely takes the cake. These last couple of months, he's been on fire. I actually got down to my first game this season. It was against the Boston Celtics during their winning streak, and Malik Beasley, it's like every three that he took was like a heat check three, and they all went in. He had a big time game that game. I think he had like 26 points, but that was my first time going to a Pistons game and seeing a player get like super duper hot from three. So that was pretty cool. But nonetheless, Malik Beasley, he's been so impactful. He's been so beneficial for the Detroit Pistons with his ability to stretch the floor, and then also his ability to play off the bench has been big time as well. So he's been able to come in as that six man, be that scoring punch, be that 3-point punch, and he has played himself into that 6 man of the year conversation. So big time signing for Malik Beasley. And then also the latest veteran addition, making the trade from Tim Hardaway Jr. He has been big time. He has been big time as well. Starting majority of this year for the Detroit Pistons just being another floor stretcher, a guy that can get super duper hot from three. He's not scared to take any 3-point shot, and he's not a guy that teams are going to be leaving open on the 3-point line. So the Detroit Pistons getting these three guys, like I said, if you're not really into basketball, you won't know who Tobias Harris is, you won't know who Malik Beasley is, and you won't know who Tim Hardaway Jr. is. But the Detroit Pistons, they saw all the young talent that they had, all the young talent that they were bubbling with, and they didn't need a Kevin Garnett, they didn't need a LeBron James to come in and turn this franchise down, because we already got one of them type of players, and that's Cade Cunningham. And I'm gonna keep saying it, been preaching this gospel for 3-4 years, and a lot of people was telling me, not people on YouTube, nobody on YouTube. Now, I've never seen nobody on the comments talking bad about Cade Cunningham, but just people I've come across in real life have been saying some of the craziest things about him. He should be a shooting guard, or he should be coming off the bench. I couldn't believe I was hearing that, but patience has paid off for the Detroit Pistons, and now they're looking like they're in a very great situation. And Cade Cunningham, I know it's early in his career, but talent-wise, he's looking like one of the best Detroit Pistons ever. But that's what I want to talk about with you guys today. A terrific offseason by the Detroit Pistons. It has led to some great things, some great basketball moments. If you guys enjoyed, please leave a like, comment down below if you agree or disagree, and then subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man, and that's curtains.